Ever notice how you can sit down with full intention to do something productive, and within minutes, your brain starts acting like it has its own agenda? You open your laptop, you tell yourself, this is the moment, and then suddenly you're checking messages, then notifications, then maybe taking a quick scroll, and somehow you end up watching something completely unrelated that has nothing to do with your goals. Before you know it, time has disappeared, and you're left wondering, wait, what just happened? This experience feels random, but it isn't. Your brain is constantly scanning for stimulation, novelty, and reward. It has been wired over thousands of years to prioritize anything that feels new, interesting, or unpredictable, because in ancient environments, those signals often meant opportunity or danger, both of which required immediate attention. In today's world, that same wiring is being triggered by social media feeds, notifications, and endless streams of content that are specifically designed to capture and hold your attention. Your brain does not distinguish between something that is biologically important and something that is digitally stimulating. It simply responds to what feels rewarding in the moment. This is where dopamine comes in. Dopamine is not just a pleasure chemical, as it is often described. It is more accurately a motivation and anticipation chemical. It tells your brain, this might be worth it. Pay attention. Distractions are extremely effective at triggering dopamine because they offer quick, unpredictable rewards. When you scroll through content, you never know what the next piece will be. It might be funny, surprising, emotional, or interesting. That unpredictability is powerful. Your brain becomes hooked on the possibility that the next swipe might be better than the last. This is why the phrase, just one more, feels so automatic. It is not a lack of discipline, it is a neurological response to variable rewards. Now, compare this to focused work. Studying, building a skill, or working toward a long-term goal usually does not provide immediate feedback or instant gratification. The reward is delayed. There is no sudden spike of novelty every few seconds. From your brain's perspective, this type of activity feels slower, more demanding, and less stimulating, so your brain categorizes it as low priority, even if, logically, you know it is important. This creates a conflict between your short-term impulses and your long-term intentions. Many people interpret this as laziness, but that is not accurate. Laziness implies a lack of willingness, but what is actually happening is a mismatch between your brain's reward system and the environment you are operating in. Modern environments are heavily optimized for distraction. Infinite scrolling, autoplay features, push notifications, and endless streams of content are specifically designed to capture and hold your attention. These systems adapt to your behavior in real time, learning what captures your attention and delivering more of it. As a result, your brain is constantly being pulled in multiple directions, often without you consciously realizing it. Every time you switch your attention from one task to another, your brain must reorient itself. This consumes mental energy and creates what is known as attention residue. Even after you switch tasks, part of your mind remains stuck on the previous activity. This is why it feels harder to refocus after checking your phone. Your cognitive system is not fully reset, it is juggling fragments of multiple tasks at once. This fragmentation leads to a familiar mental state. Foggy, scattered, and unfocused. You sit down to work, but nothing seems to click. Thoughts feel disorganized. Concentration feels unstable. The more frequently you repeat this pattern, the more your brain reinforces distraction as a default behavior. Neural pathways strengthen through repetition, so each instance of giving into distraction makes the habit more automatic over time. It's important to understand that your brain is not trying to sabotage you. It is trying to conserve energy and maximize efficiency. From an evolutionary standpoint, avoiding unnecessary effort and prioritizing immediate rewards made sense. However, in the modern world, those same tendencies lead to avoidance of deep work and overconsumption of easy stimuli. Without intentional structure, your brain will naturally gravitate toward the path of least resistance. Distractions are almost always easier to access than meaningful work. They require less effort, less focus, and less emotional investment. So unless you deliberately design your environment and habits, your brain will default to distraction because it is the easiest option available. This is why relying purely on motivation or willpower often fails. Willpower is a limited resource. It fluctuates depending on your energy, mood, stress levels, and overall mental state. Trying to override your brain's natural tendencies through force alone is not sustainable. Instead, what is needed is a shift in strategy. Rather than fighting your brain, you work with it. You recognize that your behavior is influenced by cues, environments, and reinforcement patterns. Once you understand this, you can begin to redesign those elements in a way that supports focus instead of undermining it. This approach is more effective because it reduces reliance on constant self-control and instead builds systems that guide your behavior automatically. In this way, distraction is not just something to eliminate, it is something to understand. Once you see how your brain responds to stimulation, reward, and environment, you can begin to take back control, not by force, but by design. Distraction is not only about external stimuli, it is also deeply connected to internal emotional states. Many people do not realize that distraction often serves as a coping mechanism for uncomfortable feelings. When you sit down to do something meaningful, your mind may begin to generate subtle resistance. You might feel bored, anxious, overwhelmed, or uncertain. These feelings are uncomfortable, and your brain naturally seeks ways to escape them. This is where distraction comes in. Checking your phone, switching tasks, or engaging in quick entertainment provides immediate relief from those internal sensations. Your brain learns that distraction reduces discomfort, and as a result, it begins to associate distraction with emotional relief. Over time, this reinforces the habit. This creates a feedback loop. Discomfort leads to distraction leads to relief, and relief reinforces the behavior. Even though distraction doesn't solve the underlying issue, it temporarily soothes the emotional state. This is why procrastination is not just a time management problem, it's often an emotional regulation strategy. When tasks feel challenging or uncertain, they can trigger deeper fears, such as fear of failure, fear of not being good enough, or fear of not knowing where to start. These fears may not always be obvious, but they influence behavior at a subconscious level. Instead of confronting these feelings, the brain chooses the easier path, avoidance. Distraction becomes a way to avoid not just the task, but the emotions associated with the task. This is why people can spend hours avoiding something important while fully aware that they should be doing it. The avoidance is not logical, it's emotional. Another important factor is how your brain interprets effort. Tasks that require sustained concentration often feel mentally heavy, especially at the beginning. Your brain prefers tasks that provide quick feedback and clear rewards. When a task lacks these features, it feels ambiguous, which increases resistance. At the same time, distractions provide immediate sensory input and rapid shifts in stimulation. This creates a contrast between effortful tasks and effortless entertainment. Naturally, your brain gravitates towards what feels easier in the moment. There is also an identity component to distraction. The way you repeatedly behave shapes how you see yourself. If you frequently give in to distraction, your brain may begin to form a narrative like, "I am not disciplined," or "I always procrastinate." These beliefs can become self-reinforcing. When you believe you are someone who struggles with focus, you are more likely to act in ways that confirm that belief. Breaking out of this pattern requires separating your identity from your behavior. Instead of labeling yourself based on past actions, you begin to observe your patterns with curiosity. You recognize that distraction is something you do, not something you are. This shift in perspective creates space for change. From a systems perspective, distraction thrives in environments where there is low friction for entertainment and high friction for meaningful work. If distractions are always one click away and work requires setup, effort, and initiation, your brain will naturally choose the easier option. This is why environmental design is critical. If you want to reduce distraction, you need to make it slightly more difficult to access and slightly easier to engage in focused tasks. Small changes, such as reducing notifications, organizing your workspace, or setting specific times for focused work, can significantly influence your behavior over time. Introducing intentional pauses before engaging in distractions is another powerful technique. When you feel the urge to check your phone or switch tasks, pause for a moment and ask yourself a simple question such as, is this what I actually want to do right now? Or what am I avoiding at this moment? These questions activate conscious decision-making and interrupt automatic behavior. Consistency is key. The more often you practice redirecting your attention, the stronger your ability to focus becomes. Over time, these small actions compound into significant improvements in concentration, productivity, and mental clarity. Your brain begins to adapt to the new patterns, making focus feel more natural and less effortful. Eventually, you reach a point where focus is no longer something you constantly struggle to maintain. It becomes part of your default behavior. Distractions still exist, but they no longer control your direction. Instead, they become manageable interruptions rather than dominant forces. And when that happens, your mind feels clearer, your work feels more focused, and your life begins to feel more structured and purposeful. My name is Peter. If this feels a little too real, share it with someone who needs a reset. Tap like and subscribe if you're done letting distractions win. Don't miss the next video. That's where the real shift begins. Comment reset if you're starting today.